Communities of faith offer vital services in times of crisis and trauma.
Communities of faith do us a great service in this regard. However, they need to be careful about protecting the rights of the vulnerable.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
And I would also like to welcome you to today's program. So glad that you've tuned in. We look forward to seeing you week after week. If you've been a longtime supporter and viewer, if this is your first time, a special welcome to you. I think you're going to find that this is a very unique program. There's none other like it that I've known, especially over the last 65 plus years this program has been on the air. Many of you have been longtime viewers. I certainly wasn't around for the first program, but I've watched a number of them through the years. It's good to be a part of this particular program today. We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
Good day. My name is Mel Robeck. I'm Senior Professor of Church History and Ecumenics and Special Assistant to the President for Ecumenical Relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I'm also an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God.
My name is Dan Levin. I'm the Senior Rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Howdy, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the Senior Minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
I'm Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University, which is in Berrien Springs, Michigan. We are affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Hi, I'm Carl Truvall. I'm the Richard J. Dinda Professor of Lutheran Identity and Mission at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am an Episcopal priest, canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much for being here today. And again, thank you for tuning in. This is going to be a very interesting discussion, I think. Glad that you're here for it. Over the past decade, we have seen a rise in the number of mass shootings in the U.S. In the aftermath of such events, those most traumatized seek relief from their trauma and grief. Following the killing of 2 students by one of their classmates in Saugus, California, a Los Angeles Times reporter noted that churches, cathedrals, and synagogues became impromptu gathering spots for heart-sick residents. She wrote that they offered both spiritual guidance and met practical needs. Many found solace in communal prayer. Some responded with anger, while these faith communities offered grace. While the reporter sobbed in a mass vigil at a local park, a woman from one congregation put her arm around her, making her feel as though she too was part of the community and bringing grace to her. One congregation even solicited contributions to be given to the mother of the shooter, noting that she was also a victim of her son's violence. In light of such stories, we would ask our panelists to respond to the following questions today. First of all, in a day when some political candidates are calling for the taxation of houses of worship, do such actions demonstrate their value to the community that no other institutions fill? Another question, are you aware of any institution that is able to compete with the types of contributions that faith communities provide during such times of crisis? And then the next question would be, how would you assess the value of the contributions made by faith communities during times of crisis? That is our subject today and the questions we've asked our panelists to address. Let's go back to those to help to begin the program. Rabbi Levin, good to have you here today. Tell us more of your thoughts on the subject, please.
It's a pleasure to be here with you and everybody else today. Houses of worship are supposed to be safe and sacred spaces. Our worship center is called a sanctuary for a reason. It's supposed to be a place that provides a sense of security and safety. And in the aftermath of a trauma like a mass shooting, houses of worship are vital places to provide the kind of solace and support that the entire community needs, not just the immediate victims, though them too, but the ripples that effect from those horrible events. Our congregation is just miles from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And our congregation, immediately after that trauma, became a center of support for not just the members of our congregation, but the broader community, where people could get together and talk about their feelings, their fears, their angers, their anguish, and also to find a place to talk about what to do with that anger. So our congregation was able to organize people who wanted to respond in the most effective way possible. A very good friend of mine and dear colleague, Rabbi Stephanie Kramer, is one of the rabbis at Congregation Shomer Torah in Santa Rosa, California, which found itself in the midst of the crisis of the fires. Their congregation, thankfully, was spared from the fire, but became a really important community center to offer vital social services that other communities were just not prepared to offer. They offered daycare for weeks for families so that their children would have a safe place to be during the day while they had to attend to all of the different elements that had afflicted their families with lost homes or lost businesses and other traumas. They were able to provide meals for people who had nothing to eat. And because that synagogue is connected to a broader faith community, the Jewish Federation of the Bay Area and other synagogues were able to rally their support to help that individual congregation provide for the broader needs of not just the Jewish community of Santa Rosa, but the broader community in that area. I think houses of worship provide for spiritual healing, because the impact of these traumas is not just physical, it's not just emotional, it hits the entire core of who we are as humanity. And I think that they provide real, vital, important needs in addressing the emotional, spiritual, and physical health of people who are racked by pain in the aftermath of these traumas.
All right, thank you very much. Very inspiring stories, too. Dr. Robeck, glad you're here. You're concerned about proselytizing and maybe using the church for a way that is not appropriate?
Well, I
perhaps?
didn't use that word, but,
Right.
but the figure does stick. You know, I was really drawn to the issues surrounding the death of Kobe Bryant, where we found thousands of people gathering at Staples Center in Los Angeles to express their grief and their sorrow and so forth. I think the difference between what took place at Staples Center and what is offered by faith communities, however, is the realization that there is grace to be extended, that is a divine grace, that we are those kinds of people who are there to, in a sense, function as mediators in mediating that grace to people, helping them with their to understand the spiritual side of the realities that take place when anyone dies or when something tragic like this shooting that took place in Saugus is in play. So I really want to affirm and express my appreciation for any faith community that does these kinds of things. And I think all of our faith communities, regardless of the tradition, have people and programs in place that can reach out and do these kinds of things and do them well. The problem in some communities, and you know, I have to say that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a group called Church Growth Specialists who said when people are in crisis, they are most vulnerable to hear the gospel of Jesus. I think that's a violation of the trust that they have been given to mediate the kind of grace that they are expected to give. If people ask for help in religious direction, that is one thing, but to offer it without the request, I think is something that ought not to be done. So proselytism is a problem. On the international scene, we call such people rice Christians if they're converted by the offering of certain kinds of things, and I think that's something that all faith communities should avoid.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Robeck. Now, Reverend Plumley, your comments, please.
Thank you. You can give me a doctorate if you'd like, but that's all right.
If I had the authority and power, I would confer many upon you.
I think back to several of our congregations around the country that have been highlighted as places that have provided this sort of center for community gathering during times of crisis. I think particularly the horrible tornado that hit Joplin, Missouri 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. South Joplin Christian Church, one of our congregations, was in the center of that tornado's path, and became a center around which all sorts of help was provided to people, both spiritual help in the sense of a place to gather as corporately, but also a place for individuals to seek out help and consolation, as well as the very real kinds of help that people need in crises, trying to put their lives back together, get food on the table, and that sort of thing. I remember that I've seen the sanctuary of my church filled to the gills twice, and once was on Friday, September 15th, 2001, when everybody in the country was encouraged to find a place of solace at noon on that Friday by the president. And we, being a downtown congregation, had people standing in the aisles and standing along the back wall. Every place and every seat in our sanctuary, which holds about 650 people, and is usually about a quarter full, was filled. But we had to be careful. Now, I understand the care that Dr. Robeck is talking about. We had to be careful in every word we said to make sure that we were understanding that the entirety of the community was there, and that they weren't there to be sold on a brand of religion. They were there to seek comfort and to find some guidance for a way forward and some hope in the situation. And yes, that is provided by the God that that's been revealed to us in different ways depending on our communities. But we got to take care about how we say that, because we can come across as really crass and uncaring.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Luxton, glad to have you back on the program today. What are your thoughts on the subject?
I don't have much more to say than those that have spoken. I think the balance is very important. Just a few months ago, there was a fire in an apartment building just down the road from our university. We had a few students who we knew were resident in there, but basically the whole place went on fire and the whole building imploded and just went down. Ironically, it was one of our students that happened to be visiting in the campus that actually recognized it and had just gone through a training and actually got all the residents out and got the fire brigade there, which prevented any loss of life. But it was interesting that the way that it developed after that, to see how there was a natural grouping of individuals who had not connected with each other, from our chaplains to our student people to some of our students, who all emerged in the area to start supporting and helping. And eventually they all connected with each other on Messenger, and I got in the conversation and heard what was going on. And I think that's what we are as faith communities, is we naturally, instinctively reach out where there is a time of need, and we are there for people. That's the heart of who we are. That's the heart of our humanity and our faith, and that's what we do. And I think we do that extremely well. And while we partnered in that situation with Red Cross and other groups who also do amazing jobs, I think our role becomes quite unique because of how we relate to humanity, because of our faith traditions. But yes, I think that's a time to support, to be there for people, in distress. But it's not a time to actually then drive our own agenda. At that time, our own agenda should be outside here. Our agenda should be totally focusing on the people and the people's needs.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Truvall, glad to have you here today. Your thoughts, please.
Well, this is wonderful. It's hard to add anything because this has all been, I thought, well said. I think the one thing I will add is this recalls a book that I studied, and I did some work here in Dallas, honestly, on the topic of mediating institutions. That is, we have these macro structures in our society where people go for services that are sponsored by the government or other large institutions. And then we have the family, which is both strong and also very fragile. But the importance in any culture is to have what are called mediating or bridging institutions that are larger than the family but have strong connective, thick tissue of relationships, like churches, synagogues, mosques. And then these institutions help mediate when people have a need. They can't get things from these larger structures that are too big, complicated to move quickly, but communities of faith can move very quickly and move in a relational way and also in a very tangible physical way to help people. And that these are really critical institutions in society, and I think what you all have described is essentially that kind of institution. And a healthy society has many of those, and they duplicate and they overlap. So that would be just my contribution.
Okay, thank you very much. And Canon Peterson, glad to have you here today. What are your thoughts on this subject, please?
Yes, I mean, I'm certainly in agreement with everything that has been said around the table. I just want to say one thing in relationship to the moderator's statement. It said the reporter noted that churches, cathedrals, and synagogues, well, cathedrals and churches are both Christian institutions, and the synagogue, of course, is Jewish. But when we speak about houses of worship, we simply are not speaking about Christian and Jewish places of worship. We're thinking, as Carl said, mosques. We think about Buddhist centers of worship, Hindu centers of worship. Any center of worship certainly falls into the category in which we're speaking about today, and so therefore I would be very hesitant just to speak about churches, synagogues, and cathedrals in our discussion. I also think it's important to point out that I believe that the issue that has to be dealt with at that type of a crisis is not to argue about or the tragic moments of how to answer these questions of mass shootings and of these other incidences, but indeed it is to be able to provide a safe place for the community to gather, where people can hug each other, pray together, and cry together. It seems to me that that's a very essential part of being able to gather at a place of a worship, a place of worship for the community. I would like to be able to just give an example of what one church did, particularly during 9/11, and we all know the church itself, St. Paul's Chapel, which is literally right across the street from 9/11. But St. Paul's Chapel, miraculously, didn't even have a pane of glass broken. Every building around it was in some form of disarray, but that church did not experience any type of damage. But the church immediately opened its doors. People were coming in quite soon after, to particularly first responders coming to be able to sleep there. They were sleeping in the pews. They set up a barbecue outside. People were able to eat there. And this continued literally for 6 months following. And ultimately the pews were taken out so beds could be brought in and everything. But the rescue workers who came found that place to be a place of rescue, a place of comfort. And so here a church literally on the ground opened its doors. And to this very day, there are people who return to St. Paul's Church who were the first responders every single Sunday. They have found that place as a place of solace, and to be able to cope with that crisis that they had to face that day, a crisis none other that this United States has ever faced before.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone here think it would be appropriate for a place of worship to hand like a book of promises, for example, out of the Scripture, or something for them to take home? Is that off limits? Not to offer it to them, not to insist. Is there ever a time for that? Yes, Rabbi.
So I think there's a difference between making materials available to people who might be seeking them, especially in the moment of a spiritual crisis, and preying on the vulnerability of someone who has experienced trauma. And what I was very appreciative of what Dr. Robeck said was the idea that we have to all be very, very careful to guard against that temptation of preying on the vulnerabilities of those who are in crisis. But I do believe that faith communities are uniquely positioned to provide aid in ways that other institutions just can't. on the micro level and on the macro level. In the aftermath of the hurricane that just devastated the Bahamas, because our community is 90 miles away, we have friends who know people, who know the captain, who knows the guy who's the harbor master on that island. And because of that, we were able to create a flotilla of boats that brought immediate need across to help them. And I was able to put the call out in our congregation, and my friend's garage was filled with supplies. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the Reform Jewish Movement summer camps were used as aid centers, and people from all over the country sent in supplies. And I think that's why part of the beauty of the fabric of American life is how the faith communities partner in those ways.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time. I could sit and listen to a lot of stories like this, and I'm sure the viewers at home would like to as well. Maybe in the summations you can bring up some of the issues as well. There is an important announcement I'd like for you to stand by, and we'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the town hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you and welcome back. I do hope you take some time to write us a note or communicate with us in whatever way is convenient for you. We'd like to hear about your hear your comments about today's program. And then also, if you have suggestions for future topics, please let us know. And do go to the website and learn more about the Town Hall Estates. I think you will be pleased, if not blessed. So let's go to our panelists and hear their summations. Let's begin with Dr. Robeck. You're first.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this particular congregation because one of my colleagues' father established that church and pastored it for many years. It's a very useful, very helpful congregation, which really has an impact on the community at large. I was really touched by the fact that the reporter would reveal her own need to have some sense of community in the midst of all of that. That does not happen very often. But I do think that the churches and other religious institutions are in a unique place to offer grace to people who are in need, not only of help financially or help with supplies. We have the Convoy of Hope in the Assemblies of God, which does precisely the kinds of things that we've heard around this table. But short-term and long-term are very different in some ways, and the short-term needs, I think, more help in the grief and understanding of the presence of God in the middle of that, in spite of how everything looks.
And thank you. Reverend Plumley, your summation.
Thank you. I think crisis or no crisis, communities of faith come through. I want to give a plug to some friends of mine in an outfit called Partners for Sacred Places, which is a national organization that help congregations like mine, who have old downtown churches primarily, to assess the valuation of what the congregation does for the community, so that it can then go out and raise funds in the larger community. And it has a tool for assessing all the things that the church does, or that the synagogue does, or that the place of the house of worship does to be able to tell the world, this is the kind of value that this house of worship provides to this community. But there's no way fully to put on paper all the good things that happen because of the work of houses of worship.
Thank you, Dr. Truvall.
I want to flip it a little bit, because I think so often those of us who are part of communities of faith, and when we involve ourselves in service, we do it because it's a part of who we are and we get satisfaction in serving. But in my experience with that kind of service of the community, there always is this flipping transformation in which all of a sudden, even as you serve, you find that the people you're serving are actually serving you. And there's also this powerful dynamic of when communities of faith are involved in all of these activities, it actually is a building activity for the people who are serving themselves.
All right, thank you very much. And then Canon Peterson.
One of the things I found to be fascinating with what happened at St. Paul's Church is that not only did they have Episcopal services there over the next 9 months, but I'm going to just share this with you, that they had also a Shinto, Japanese Shinto service in the cemetery, a Native American peace pipe ceremony, a Baha'i prayer service, a Hanukkah service, a Buddhist chant, a Mennonite choir performance, as well as Islamic chants.
Covered all the bases.
They covered all the bases
right.
and were welcoming to them.
Thank you. Dr. Luxton, your summation, please.
The tragedy is that as the world is right now and as our society is, these events are happening all the time.
Yes.
There is tragedy all the time on a micro level or a larger level. And if we are not central to helping bring relief in that, then what are we doing? It seems to me that that's about who we really are at core. And that is representing what values we have.
All right, thank you very much. And Rabbi Levin, your summation, please.
There are wonderful community organizations that are not affiliated with the religious community, like Rotary, United Way, and others, and they do great work, but I don't think they can replace the vital work that religious communities can offer in so many different ways.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. I think we've learned a lot as we've gone around the table. I think most of your churches or institutions are involved in some kind of public relief in times of crisis and trauma, and maybe yours is too. We'd like to hear about that. In fact, if you wrote us a note and tell us what your church, synagogue, or your religious organization is doing to reach out into the community during time of crisis, I think that would be encouraging to us and maybe even spark a future topic. We'll come back to this sometime soon. And also, go to the website. There you can find past programs on many different subjects. As I said before, this program has been on the air for decades, over 65, going on 67 years now. And it truly has been a blessing to us and those who participated here at the Town Hall, but to so many families, not only in our country, but around the world. And we know we have some viewers overseas. A special hello to you and thank you for tuning in. We look forward to meeting you again at the same time, next time when we gather around this table. But for now, the Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.